Do not edit this. A lot of people knew. Because you can't do what he did unless you have other people supporting what you're doing.
Spanish Fly, the girl would drink it and hello, America.
Bill Cosby had been one of my heroes. I'm a black man, stand-up comic. I was born in the 70s. But this?
More trouble for Bill Cosby.
The accusations just keep coming in.
This was complicated. How do we talk about Bill Cosby?
It's complex, Kamau, you know?
Bill Cosby was our teacher.
Kind of center of morality all throughout his career.
Made my grandmother laugh, made everybody in the house laugh.
You can't speak about Black America in the 20th century and not talk about Bill Cosby.
Thank you.
On that set, I saw Black writers, Black directors.
Do you remember what his job was on the show?
He was a pediatrician.
He was an OBGYN.
Oh, that's right, he delivered babies. Oh my God.
You could have been a dentist for crying out loud, but you weren't. Bill Cosby has been leaving breadcrumbs.
It's my barbecue sauce. After people want something, they get all huggy-buggy.
He was talking about how to drug women.
Beautiful women. They were lined up outside of his dressing room.
What did you think was going on?
He looked at me and he said, "Fooled them again."
You don't often learn that your hero's the worst sorts of villains.
This is just a sad day in the history of Black culture.
It was just like, no, not Bill Cosby.
It's tough being a sister saying,
Even though it scares me,
you know now.
I feel like I have to have this discussion.
Not just on television.
We thought we knew Cosby. We never knew Cosby.
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, and welcome to AAFCA Roundtables. Today we are talking to Kamau Bell about his amazing Showtime 4-part miniseries called We Need to Talk About Cosby. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the members who are on the call today, starting with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Ruben Regaud in Miami, Brandon Collins in New York, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, Reggie Pounder in Chicago, Dana Abercrombie in New York, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, DJ Chris Stiles in Cleveland, Ohio, Nancy Green in Baltimore, Al McGee in South Florida, and Carolyn Hines in Toronto. We've got a full house today. I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
My name is Reggie Ponder. I'm out of Chicago, as Gil just mentioned. My question is that when watching this piece, we see that Cosby did a lot for Blacks and to advance Black culture. He was a great philanthropist, but he also was a prolific rapist. It seems that people are willing to accept his advancements, erase his personal achievements, and highlight his transgressions and crimes. That's what my takeaway from watching this is that, yeah, forget everything else and do that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just want to know, what's your take from this discussion?
You know, I think that I understand how a lot of Black folks feel like we can't afford to lose Bill Cosby, because a lot of this is about representation. And we still, although there are plenty of Black people who could be international cultural icons and role models, the ways in which white supremacy platforms white voices first and white males' voices first, and that if you're a Black voice, it's harder to get your access to the public microphone. And then if you're somebody like Bill Cosby, who's one of the biggest icons ever in the history of this country of any race, it feels like it's hard to lose that, and it feels like it's hard to reconcile that. And also, if you don't actually I think one of the things we want to do with this series was really listen to these women and have them tell their stories in ways you don't often hear them. So if you're just reading the headlines, it becomes maybe easier to dismiss these stories. So for me, it was about as Black people, we are not delicate, we are strong, we are capable of holding multiple truths in our heads about America. We have America, we can say America's the greatest country on earth, and also America's hard on Black folks. So this is about the fact that I believe we can have this conversation and sort of go, here's the things he did that changed America better for Black folks, and here's the things he did that are absolutely horrible.
My name is Juan Peralta. I live in Miami, but I'm from the Dominican Republic. And my question is something that we always talk when these subjects come out. Do you think that we should separate the artist from the personal life or vice versa? And because we've been seeing a lot of these cases lately in the past 7 years.
Thank you for the question. I mean, I think we all separate the art from the artist lots of times. We do it regularly. Like we just, if we like the artist enough, we don't worry about the fact that we don't like their personal life. And it doesn't have to be criminal. It could just be like, you don't like the fact that they wore that red MAGA hat, but you like their new album coming out. So I think we often do that. We separate the art from the artist. And again, I want to say it doesn't have to be about criminal activity. It just be you don't agree with them politically. I think it becomes a problem when you expect other people to have the same lines of separation that you have. And then if they don't, then you shame them instead of interrogating, well, why am I able to do that with this person and they're not able to? I think that, a lot of these disputes get sort of mediated or addressed on social media, which is the worst place to have any sort of discussion, I think, many times, especially if you don't know the people you're talking to. So I think it's really about the fact that, like, we regularly do that. And I think that we are also complicated human beings who we all go home at night and take in content on our devices that we wouldn't share with people we work with the next day. And again, it doesn't have to be criminal content. It's just stuff that you're like, I don't really want people to know I watch this reality show. We're capable of being complicated, but we should be able to be respectful and understand that everybody doesn't draw the same lines that we individually draw.
Harrison Martin with Flixborough. I got a Winston-Salem. I just basically want to talk to you about the fact that in the docuseries, you see Cosby himself whenever they bring up the allegations. He doesn't want to talk about it, and any part of him talks about it, he wants it cut from the interview. Do you think if he just came out from the get-go with all the mountain evidence against him and said, I apologize, I'm sorry, I was a monster, I committed these atrocities, with the stain on his legacy, would we be a little bit lighter on him? Even though he committed these crimes, he's guilty, we get that. But if he apologized and said, I'm going to try to do better, would we kind of be a little lighter on him?
I mean, I think that's back to like the last question. First of all, thank you for the question. I appreciate the nuance of that question. It goes back to everybody has to draw that line in a different place. So I think absolutely there'd be people who are like, thank you for at least admitting what we all know to be true. We can all now, I can look at you in a different way, but I think it also would be about what would he then say? Is he trying to make restitution? Is he doing rehab work? Is he doing things in his community? What is he doing beyond that? I think would be the next question. Because believe me, I live in Oakland. I know a lot of prison abolitionists who think that sending somebody to prison is not the way to go. It doesn't rehab anybody. So for me, the idea would be like, it would be a start, but then there'd be a lot of questions after that about what's the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
Well, here's my question. I put up my review of the documentary on YouTube, and I got a lot of negative comments, a lot about you. One is, why are you trying to bring down a Black man? Why is he still talking about this? Cosby never got convicted of anything. And things like that. Were you prepared for the backlash when you put this documentary up? And also, are you surprised that you got some backlash about your documentary?
No, I would be naive if I was surprised about the backlash. I think I understood what I was getting into. I understand where Cosby sits in culture and where some people want to keep him sitting in that spot in culture. I don't know if you all remember the movie Ghost Dog with what's his name? Black actor's name. I'm just escaping. Forrest Whitaker. Thank you. I'm sorry. I've been talking a lot these last few days. Forrest Whitaker, and there's a part in there where he talks about being a samurai and you have to imagine your worst defeat so you can be prepared for whatever comes at you. And so I took that in as a philosophy. So I spent a lot of time while I was working on this imagining all the different things that could be said to me or could come back at me. Doesn't mean I imagined all of them, but I just knew that this was not going to be, it's not a superhero movie. I'm not releasing the sequel to the Black Panther. So I was aware that this was going to be controversial in certain segments of America and some of those segments of the Black community.
Thank you very much. And again, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Bell, Brandon Collins, the Media and Popcorn Podcast. My question for you is, did you ever consider reaching out to see if Cosby would do this documentary after he was released from prison? And how did his release, even though we saw you find out in real time, how did it ultimately impact like your overall plans for this docuseries?
So it was always about the conversation around Bill Cosby. It wasn't about a conversation with Bill Cosby. And then when he got out of prison, I mean, any talk we had about including him, we were so far down the road at that point that it was about a conversation about Bill Cosby. And as the one of the last questioners said, Harrison, he's been very clear that he's holding the line. He's holding the line. He's not saying, well, let's talk about this. And I think the only way to talk about the good and the bad of his career is to do it with him not in the room. Otherwise, that, for me, that biases the conversation. And I don't know how you talk to the survivors and then tell them Bill Cosby's also going to sit down for an interview. I don't know how you get their trust in the project if you're also if you say, also, we got an interview with Bill Cosby. I was always sort of, two documentaries that inspired this are Ezra Edelman's O.J. Simpson Made in America and Dream Hampton Surviving R. Kelly, neither of which featured the people that they were about. But those are the documentaries that I looked at and going, this is how you make this kind of work.
Thank you so much. And Black stand-up comics in New York, we support your work.
Thank you, brother.
Joel Monroe, great to talk to you today. Kamau. So
thank you for the Forrest Whitaker thing. I appreciate that. I can't believe I couldn't.
Came to mind. So when we think about the example that you used in the documentary of Pantages and that family and the charges that were brought against him, but we still have that theater, we still have that legacy. We think about the Pantages Theater with some of the greatest shows. Do you think that this is something that can happen with Cosby in this era, because there's social media attached to it and there's so many different ways that these stories can live on in dialogue at this point? Has that been what's been the feedback you've gotten as far as that? And what do you envision 10, 15 years from now?
I mean, I think all entertainment eventually sort of dies on the vine. I think if most of us sit down and watch Gone with the Wind right now, we'd be like, this was a big deal, So I think that we just have to understand that all this stuff starts to shrink in the distance. Even the greatest things of all time start to shrink. So I think that's just naturally going to happen. I think the challenge is, and that's why I've always been trying to be clear, and the documentary at the end is like, this is bigger than Bill Cosby. At first, this thing started as me being like, the question is, can we separate the art from the artist, and should we? Ultimately, that's between you and your own self, and I'll let you all handle that. We're all adults, and I'm not going to try to indict you for what you listen to or what you watch, as long as it is not actually a criminal thing you're listening to or watching. So that's fine. The bigger challenge is America, since its inception, has not supported specifically women, and of course, even more so, Black women who are survivors of sexual assault and rape. And this Bill Cosby story is a way into that discussion. And shouldn't we all be invested in creating a society and dismantling a society that does not do a good job of protecting, healing, bringing justice to women who are survivors of sexual assault and rape? Again, Black women specifically, as we're talking about with this. And shouldn't we do a better job of raising people up in a society that if you see something happening that you think is hurting someone, that you have a place to go where you can say, hey, I just saw this person do something. Can you help? Can you investigate? And right now, as many of the survivors say, going to the cops doesn't work for most of them. And so I think that to me, those are and I've done work on this on United Shades. Sex education classes in this country mostly just focus on don't have sex generally, and not intimate partner violence, predators, how to be a supportive ally, how to help somebody in the middle of a bad situation. And to me, those are the bigger things to learn from this. Whether or not we remember the greatest hits of Bill Cosby is sort of like, that's not as much of a concern to me. That stuff has already happened. Those of us who remember it can always talk about it if we want to.
W. Kamau Bell, DJ Chris Styles, WOVU 95.9 FM out of Cleveland. Can we touch more based on, I read more articles about you. You made this film for women, especially for Black women, and getting Black women to speak about it. You said you didn't have too much difficulty getting the Black women to speak when you had on your show. On the documentary. What message do you want to convey to our Black community about this film? Because we so invested in when we first seen it, we thought it was just all white women, and then we were like, well, it's white women, so, and then we started thinking about the O.J. Simpson case. We started thinking about broadening it out, and then we found it was a Black woman that was a victim. What do you want to convey more about? How can we get this more out to our community to say, this was a bad man, and we need to protect our Black women?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you just said it right there. So, I mean, I think the challenge is, one, I think, again, Black people are used to difficult conversations about America. So I think multiple things can be true. America, the operating system is white supremacy. white supremacy is always going to be happy for the downfall of a black person. Specifically, white supremacy is going to be happy for the downfall of a powerful black man. Bill Cosby in this case, I believe there are certainly white supremacist elements that are like, yay, we got him. But on the second hand, he also can have committed these crimes that he's been accused of. So these things can be true. So you can have the white supremacy conversation, but you also got to have it is credible that he committed these crimes, that these women, that you can believe these women and believe that white supremacy is trying to take us down. So I think that's a part of it. And two, when you say you don't believe when you say we can't, we have the phrases protect black men at all costs. When you say protect, why are you prioritizing one black man's voice over the voice of many black women? I guess that's my other question. Is like, we are trained to do this. America always wants us to platform men's voices over women's voices, no matter what the race is. But as a black community, we have to know that we can't do that. And many of us don't. I don't act like I'm not here preaching to anybody. You all know this. But the idea being that like we have to, as a community, be a better supporters of specifically black women when they've been sexually assaulted and raped. And I think just generally as a country, we're not. And I think I hope this is a moment to have that discussion where we just do a better job of that. So, because if we can focus on one black woman who says, I've been sexually assaulted and raped, and then investigate that and find out that we believe it to be true, and then we can take the predator out, there will be less sexual assault and rape in the world.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie from the Coalition. Can you please walk us through the timeline of when this became like an idea? I'm probably sure you talked about it amongst your friend, to when you wanted to actually make this into a docu-series and getting the people involved.
I mean, so yeah, as you said, like this was just a conversation that I would have been having with anybody who was around me circa 2014, when the accusations start coming out in mass, when you start seeing it go from like 0 to, or one woman to over 60. So as a black man, as a comedian, as somebody at that point who's sort of starting to move through media and be interviewed about things, it was a conversation that I was being asked about in the media. I was talking to people about my life. As I'm clear, like Bill Cosby is one of my main inspirations for my career. It was never anything that I thought, oh, I have a good idea for a series. And then it's just the way that sometimes this business works, that you pitch something a million times and finally somebody says, we want to do it. This wasn't that. I wasn't going around Hollywood pitching this. I don't think I would have done that because it just wouldn't have been something that I would have thought was like, who's going to want this? I happened to be in the office. I had a meeting with Boardwalk Pictures. We were talking about, they make Cheer and Last Chance U and Chef's Table. So they make a lot of documentaries. And I was talking to them about, like, I don't see a lot of good comedy documentaries out there. And the conversation shifted to, what could you do a comedy documentary about a fallen comedian? And if you say that at that point, especially you end up talking about Bill Cosby. At that point, I said, if you did it, you'd have to do it like O.J. Simpson Made in America, where you talked about Bill Cosby, America, and the crimes. You wouldn't just talk about the crimes, and you would say, what does it say about America? That idea got us all sort of like, oh, that is a way to do it. I thought about it a lot. It's not an idea that I was like excited to go pitch. It was not an idea that I was like, oh, this is going to be my next move. It's not that kind of thing. It's not a superhero movie. But it just so happened that they had an executive at Showtime. That executive, Vinny Malhotra, was the same executive at CNN who was like, oh, we should give this guy Kamau a TV show. I think he'd be good on our network. So we had a pre-existing business relationship and a friend relationship. So it just sort of happened organically. It wasn't a thing that I took out to Hollywood and tried to make happen. It sort of just started to happen naturally, which doesn't often happen in this business, but does happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Carolyn Fraser here. So I have a Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you for speaking with us today. So at the beginning of this film, you started with this series. You started with the question, who is Bill Cosby to you now? And at the end, and you ended it with another question. What's next? Where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. So for you, could you just talk about, for you personally, what those two questions meant for you in the production of the docuseries, and then also for you personally as a comedian, as a Black man, and someone who's working in this industry, because so many predators do exist within the entertainment industry. And like you talked about the documentary by Dream Hammond about R. Kelly. And it's like, there's so many more films and so many more stories that need to come out because there's so many predators that need exposing. So for you, what do those questions mean for you?
So yeah, I think that when I asked the people at the beginning, that was often the first question I would ask people, like, if I asked you, who is Bill Cosby now? Or if an alien landed and said, who is Bill Cosby? How would you respond? Because I think it was like a way to clear the decks and go, let's just sort of, before we get into the details, let's just sort of start broad. And that reaction that I didn't know people would have, that sort of that deep breath or that sigh, I sort of realized, oh, we have to use all this, because this is all, it shows how deep this question is and how challenging this question is, even though it seems like it would be simple maybe. But so for me, that question was answered for me by Kierna Mayo, who used to be the editor-in-chief of Ebony Magazine, at the end, where she basically says Bill Cosby is like the catalyst or the key to understanding America, because his story involves two of America's major operating systems, Black people trying to racism and dealing with racism, and women not, sexism and rape culture, and women not being listened to and prioritized. That's throughout all of American history. And as you said, there are many powerful men in Hollywood, many of them white, who have done similar things to this. So, and there's documentaries about those people too. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Woody Allen, however you want to say it. But so for me, it was like, that's what I was sort of looked at this as. Like, this is how, if we understand this and learn from this is ultimately what Bill Cosby asked us to do, is learn. We can hopefully learn from this and create a better society in the way that Bill Cosby said he wanted us to. I don't think he meant this part, but I'm taking that lesson to heart. What's next is really, like, I feel like I learned years ago with United Shades of America, it's not enough to tell people this is the problem, there's the problem, it's over there. You have to give people resources. You have to sort of build a productive conversation that leads to things being better. So for me, the documentary is not the entire conversation about any of this. There's so many parts of this that could be their own 4-hour documentary, but I hope it's a way to set the table to have not just conversations, but productive conversations about structures and systems, and specifically in the entertainment industry, where power matters so much that, like, if you're the last person on the call sheet and you see the number one person on the call sheet doing something suspicious, right now, on most sets, you can't tell anybody because you'll get fired if you do. We have to flip that, where a set is more concerned about the safety of the employees and the well-being of the employees than it is about money. And as we know, it's, there's just a big articles written about Joss Whedon, who doesn't sound like it was criminal necessarily, but he was a tyrant on the set and did not make people feel good and safe. So it's about more than just this. It's about a way in which we reset the whole industry. And that work has been done a lot. Surviving R. Kelly did a lot of that work. Toronto Burke's Me Too movement did some of that work, but the work continues.
Thank you so much for making the film. Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Green with Film Critique. You both actually touched a lot on a couple of the questions that I wanted to ask. But one of the things that I wanted to maybe go a little deeper into is how the entertainment industry, I think, uniquely allows these predators to create myths around themselves that serve as a cloak for the things that they do. You mentioned Joss Whedon, and of course, in this documentary, we see that from years and years and years of Cosby's performance. And I wanted to know, how do you think that we can kind of combat that sort of thing in the entertainment industry? And also, can you go a little deeper into how we can maybe spot those types of things when we see that happening?
So what was what was the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
Just basically, you were talking about how, if you're the last person on the call sheet, you can't say anything about seeing the first person do something suspicious. And there's just a culture in entertainment of allowing predatory types to create these myths around themselves that act as a cloak. And so I wanted to know, what are some things that we can do to really combat that sort of thing? Because it's difficult. And just like in the documentary, a lot of these women, they said they felt like he was a father figure. They blame themselves for things that happened, for blacking out. I must have done something. I made a fool of myself, and so, this allows them to get away with this. And so it's really difficult to break through that. And I just wanted to know, what kind of insights do you feel can make that sort of thing easier? Really?
So thank you for that. There's so many ways to answer this. One, I think just generally as a consumer, as the consumers of entertainment, we have to stop assuming that because you made good work that you are a good person. And I think we do that even if it's not somebody like Bill Cosby who is telling us he's a good person. But I think we have to stop buying that showbiz is somehow some sort of special magical place that only good people get to be a part of it. And if if their image is good, that means they are good. I mean, I think that when you think about Bill Cosby's beginning in show business, he's not that far outside of what the studio system, which is when if you got discovered by show business, they changed your name, they told you to lie about your age, they dyed your hair, they said these are the clothes you're wearing, and they said you're dating her. But I'm gay, you're dating her. You know what I mean? So like the whole industry is built on branding and creating myths that don't exist. And so I think that, and we're still sort of in that, even with the social media era, the things that people are showing you on social media is still part of a carefully crafted brand. And I think we just have to stop thinking that because you make good art, you're a good person. Then on the inside of show business, I think a big part of this is the more we diversify who the power players are in Hollywood, the more we're not going to put up with as much, can I say bullshit with as much that, like, to me, when I like sit here and think about Shonda Rhimes and Ava DuVernay and Issa Rae, you know, these people who were like 20 years ago wouldn't, I'm not saying they wouldn't have made it, but I'm just saying that like they would have been, I don't know that they would have made it, and I don't know they would have made it as big. They might have still been working, but the fact is that these are now people who greenlight things, who move industry and move culture. And I think the more we diversify who the power players are, you just sort of clear out the old boy network sort of structure that is actually pulling this whole thing down. Like I know on the set of United Shades, I'm also really clear that I'm number one on the call sheet. But all I'm demanding is another mocha. That's the only time I'll have a tantrum about is if I don't get my, you know, that as I have a responsibility as a person who's number one on the call sheet to let people know that this is a safe work environment. And that if somebody feels like if you hurt your back, sit down, we'll get somebody else to pick this up. Like, and I think for me as a person who is in a position of power, and that doesn't make me a good person, it makes me a decent person. Like, it's just, so I want to be clear. I'm not trying to brag about my set. I'm just saying, like, I understand that, like, that I want to be healthy on this set, and I want to go home healthy, and I want to go home feeling good, and I want everybody else to go home feeling the same way. So I think it's also about, like, and if we see people aren't doing that, and this goes back to Joss Whedon, then it doesn't matter how much money you make, you got to get out of here. And I think the more we sort of claim our power, the more that the last person on the call sheet, you know, I think about Brian Flores in the NFL right now, who is basically potentially throwing his whole NFL coaching career away because he's like, I can't take it anymore. I can't take the fact that people are pretending like they're interviewing when I'm not interviewing. I think it takes, black people have a history of people like that standing up, Colin Kaepernick. You know, I can name the names and names, Rosa Parks, we can keep going. It's Black History Month, we should keep going. But the idea being that, like, and, you know, that sometimes it takes one person to go, I'm going to be the change maker here. And I think that, like, that also has to happen. But I don't want to put that pressure on the last person on the call sheet. I want to put that pressure on people like me who are number ones, but we're trying to do it in a different way.
Yes. Thank you so much. And that was great. That was insightful. And I see that happening. And this movie, thank you so much for it. It was difficult to watch, but it is so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Some people tell me they watch all 4 episodes in a row. I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, take it easy on yourself. Take it easy on yourself.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of it being out in the world, you know, what are your thoughts now that people are engaging you in conversation, people that have actually seen it? Because before you got a lot of feedback, but a lot of people hadn't seen it.
I mean, I was always aware that the people who were going to hate this the most were the ones who were never going to press play. And so I understand that for the life of the project, that's still going to be the case. I'm super excited about the Super Bowl being this weekend because it'll just clear me out of the news cycle. So I think that's a part of it, is like eventually people will move on to the next thing. But I hope that, like, or the haters will eventually find something new to hate. But I do really, like, you know, I'm still doing press around it. I did a press appearance with Lily Bernard, one of the Black women who's a survivor. I think that this conversation will still be a part of my work going forward, even if it's not connected directly to this film. I just think I really was like, I learned a lot on this project. And as you know, I never, this is not a thing, you didn't hear me say this in the doc, so it's not a thing I'm trying to do. It's not, but I will say on this call, as a Black man with 3 Black daughters, it's bigger than just, I want the industry to be better. It's just way bigger than that. It's about, you know, to quote Michael Jordan, I take it personally.
And I'm also saying, like, are there points that people are bringing up that make you think, oh, I should have done this a little differently, or am I So can you share any of that?
I mean, you know, it's hard to sort of like, it's hard to be inclusive of all the viewpoints, even the good ones. It's hard to be totally inclusive, and it's not above criticism. Somebody said that their only criticism of the doc, I read, and I haven't taken in all of it. I'm not trying to read all the good press or the bad press, but like somebody said, I wish that my criticism of it is that he never used the word grooming, because what Bill Cosby's doing was grooming. And I'm like, yeah, that's a totally fair criticism. It's not that it never came up. It's just that this train was in motion and we were just trying to figure out how to get it out of you're just sort of like trying to figure out how to do this. I wish we had done more about A Different World. We just ran out of time because one episode covered 30 years. Like the episode that A Different World was in covered the Cosby Show. It covered from like 84 to 2014. So I think that like there is more that could have been done about so many of these things. I think that people are like, how come this predator's in there, but this predator's not in there? Yeah, good point. But it's just like it was. I really feel like if anything failed us, it was our ambition. We pitched it as 5 hours, and they ended up saying you could do 4, which I understand because I'd never done anything this ambitious before. But yeah, I am a person who absolutely believes that legitimate criticism is worth it. I'm not trying to say that it's perfect and it covers everything from all the right angles. I wish we had gone into the white supremacy of the industry. Like I think that I just think there's a lot more that I could have done, but I think that like. It's 4 like 4 almost 60-minute hours. Like it is, and we weren't able to push past 60 minutes. So at some point you just have to be like, this is what we have. And I'm proud of the work that was put in. I'm not apologizing for it, but yes, there's certainly legitimate criticism to be made about it.
Kamau, thank you for this amazing piece of work. I thought it was a well-balanced, critical analysis about America's dad, about Bill Cosby, but it was well done. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate you all wanting to talk to me and engage with the work. And, I know this is not easy. It's not easy to watch. It's not easy to talk about. And we all, it's not easy to talk about in the world. And so I really appreciate you all sitting here with me and talking to me about it. And I wish it could be in public, maybe one day in the future.
Most definitely. Again, thank you for your time. And on behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, we appreciate you. We support you. We will continue to follow and uplift you, brother.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you.
Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.